Yeah, and
There we go.
you don't got the servers to carry it. All right.
Yeah, there's been some internet issues today too. I think Cloudflare and Google Cloud both banged. I don't know if any other services did as well.
Yeah, it must be the issue because everything's working now. So we are live on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube.
Weird, because I can't go live yet.
Oh, Instagram took a second, but it's going now.
Yeah, I'm still looking at clicking for go live, and it just says connected to streaming software. Go live. I hit go live, and it doesn't go live. Yeah, it says you are live.
Yeah, it's showing you are on here,
but it doesn't let me click go live on my Instagram.
Weird.
I might have to. Well, if I'm live. So let's. If
we're live on Facebook,
so
Facebook and YouTube, anyways. So
hey, how's everybody doing? All 100,000 people watching and the millions of fans across the world. You know how it is. You know what it is. You know what it is. Today, welcome to Over a Pint with Jim Smarden and Eric Coleman. I am Jim Smarden, last I checked, and we've got Eric Coleman sitting over here on the other side of the screen.
Hello.
Eric, say hello to our adoring fans.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to let Jim continue talking while I've tried to figure out some of these technical end of things on the background. You guys go ahead.
We also have sitting in here with us one of our lovely producers, kind of sitting in the background, Colin. If you want to say hello, I'll allow it.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. I really appreciate it. I'm coming to you from a black screen today, but I am sitting in my time zone. You guys are good to see.
You know what? It is all good. Well, it's just a pleasure to have you here. And then we got Brendan McDonald, somebody who I decided to pull in for this one because, well, it's as everybody knows, we've got a couple of celebrations going on this month. One of them being it is Pride Month, and the other one is why we have Brendan here. And Brendan, do you want to give us a little what we got this month to celebrate for people here?
Yes, this is Indigenous History Month, actually, Jim. And it's good to see you guys, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about it tonight.
Oh, we're happy to have you here. So I know Brendan through Rotary. He is the president of the Halifax North, correct?
Halifax Northwest.
Halifax Northwest Rotary Club. I was near there. I was near there. However, he's also, as some people might have noticed, I did have a post earlier on, like a couple weeks back, about an event that I was helping facilitate, i.e. just waiting at the airport for people to come through. And it wasn't just anyone. It's a pretty important program that's been going on, and I brought Brendan on here to talk about it, as well as we helped get the people to the rides, but I'm interested in hearing how it went as well. So please feel free to say what we have going on with you today, Brendan.
Okay, well, I guess I'm gonna talk to you folks about HIP, and this is not the tragically hip I'm talking about here. Although Gord Downey would have an affinity for this particular program, it's about honoring Indigenous peoples. It's an acronym, of course. The HIP is an acronym for that. And just maybe give you a little bit of background on where it came from and why and all of that. Would be
yeah, that's it. Like we can, like, first of all, let's start with what HIP is, because again, even when it was thrown to me, when you came and you spoke at our Rotary about it,
right.
Which, if you remember, when you came and you had a little chat with the group of us, the very much smaller group of us, I pretty much resonated with the idea right away. I loved it when you brought it up, when you brought it to us. I really feel like something like the Indigenous community is something that is a big topical conversation, but nobody actually knows what's going on with the whole like working in unison with them. So I really appreciated when you came to us,
Well,
and yeah.
well, look, you're a member of Rotary, and as you know, Rotarians do a lot of good work all the way around the world, right? Peace building in countries that are war torn, fighting polio around the globe, that sort of thing. Projects that deliver water to communities in Africa, or you name it, building houses for people who are less fortunate than most of us, and anything that has to do with giving back. And this motto is, of course, service above self.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, around 2014, when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission had tabled its report on the history of our relationship with the Indigenous peoples across the country, there was a group of people in southern Ontario who got together, a group of Rotarians, and said, look, we do all this wonderful work around the globe. Surely, to goodness, we can do something about this here at home. This is an issue that's important for everybody. It's not just for government to deal with. The federal government, of course, has a big program on this, and so does the provincial government, municipal governments, you name it. But it's also for organizations, associations, etc., and individuals to take on and address, so that our future will be a lot better than our past, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So these people got together and said, look, we need to do something about this. And from that, the idea of HIP, Honoring Indigenous Peoples program, was born. And basically, it's the vision of the program is that all Indigenous, at a time into the future, sort of thing, we're not there yet, but there will be a time when all Indigenous and non-Indigenous people will work together, interconnected, with an interrelationship for the betterment of all of us, so to speak. And it's a grassroots movement. In other words, it's common folks like you and I and Eric who are involved in all of this, and trying to first and foremost build relationships with Indigenous people, but then in all of that, to learn about their culture, learn about the history of what went on, so that we better understand what happened in the past and what's happening right now, and why Indigenous cultures are different than, let's say, non-Indigenous folks and their cultures. And I say Indigenous cultures because there are many, many Indigenous groups across the country. And in our Constitution, as you might know, there are 3 groups who are recognized individually in our Constitution. They are the First Nations, of course, and the Mi'kmaq being part of the First Nations group. There's the Inuit, who are the northern people, and that Hollywood name were called Eskimos, of course, but they are the Inuit. They are a distinct Indigenous group. And the last group is the Métis. So those are the 3 that are recognized within our Canadian Constitution and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So those are the 3 groups that we, in fact, are dealing with here, or talking about here, when we say honoring Indigenous peoples. And within these groups, for example, in the First Nations group, there are many nations. You got the Iroquois, you got the Maliseet here in New Brunswick, you got the Mi'kmaq in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and throughout New Brunswick and Atlantic Canada. You have the Haida on the west coast, on Haida Gwaii. You have the Tsimshians, the Nisga's. You can go on and on. The Cree, of course, on the prairies and up north. But all of these peoples, we've had a relationship in the past that was less than savory, let's put it that way. And of course, the residential school systems and the report on Truth and Reconciliation brought all of that into the limelight.
Yeah.
And from a personal point of view, I am not Indigenous, by the way. My roots are deep Irish. I can
The McDonald, yeah.
I can trace it back. I'm originally from Newfoundland, but I can trace it right back to Cork in Ireland. And as it turns out, both
Lovely county.
yeah, and Kilkenny actually is where we
Been
came
there. Love it.
from. Yeah,
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
yeah. It's a nice. I've been there a couple of times as well. But both my mother's family and my father's side of the family, the McDonalds, the Fitzpatricks and the McDonalds came from Kilkenny. So I'm as Irish as you can get without being there. And of course, coming from Newfoundland, I have a bit of the twang of it as well. But all to say to you that from a personal point of view, in my career and in my travels in my life, I've been touched by Indigenous peoples, and I've had the good fortune of working with them throughout Atlantic Canada, across the prairies into Ontario and Quebec, as well as an extended stint in British Columbia with the Haidas, the Simpsions, and Ishkas that I mentioned, and the Tahltans actually that I mentioned earlier. But what I saw in all of that and what I experienced, quite frankly, touched me in a way that I believe strongly in that we can do better. We can do much better than what we've done. And I've seen it, and I've lived it, I've worked it, and frankly, it's not. In sometimes when you see it, it's not a pretty sight, and you wonder whether or not that you are in the same country that we call Canada, the place that we're so proud of. And when you see it happening in these communities the way it has, and to the extent that it did, you question, quite frankly, what went wrong and why it went so terribly wrong. And so this initiative is not to dwell on the past. There's nothing in the world that you and I or Eric can do about it. Not a thing in the world. What we can do, however, is do better going forward. And this is what HIP is about, is trying to understand the past, get the truth, not what's on necessarily on CBC and CTV and all the the negative stuff you see there, but what really is going on. What is the culture? Why are they having smudging ceremonies, and why do they dress the way they do? Why is their language so important to them? Why is it important to us? I mean, maybe sometimes we have to look into ourselves to get the answer to something else, right? Anyway, the idea behind HIP is to build a platform whereby people can better understand, I guess, what is really happening and what these cultures are all about and how we can work together in a more harmony and more understanding, etc. Now, again, it's not to correct what happened in the past or not to deal with what was happening in the past because there's nothing we can do about it. It's to say from here on, never again, so to speak, right? That sort of approach to it.
Yeah.
You can ask me some questions or I'll go on forever.
Yeah, no, and that was just the last comment was actually the good one. It's like how is the plan of going forward? Like, what does the HIP entail of? Like, let's start with the youth, like the why to why.
Okay.
That wasn't just about Indigenous kids alone or youth alone. That was kids brought from all across to kind of bring the importance of it.
Yeah. So getting to that particular program, it is the hallmark of HIP. It's the youth to youth, Y to Y program. But it's just one piece of it. And when I spoke to your club a while back, Jim, I talked about what we are doing in our club to help people better understand Indigenous cultures and all of these sorts of things. We have Indigenous moments where members do research on different tribes, et cetera, or different cultural practices, and help the rest of the community to understand it. And the community, in my case, is my fellow Rotarians, right? But the hallmark of HIP itself, the big program, if I can put it that way, is the Youth to Youth Conference. And this year was the fourth year that it has happened. It started off in Ontario. It went to Winnipeg, or just outside of Winnipeg. In the following year, it was in British Columbia. And this past year, it was in Acadia in Wolfville here in Nova Scotia. And that was the program that you were part of, Jim.
Mhm.
So essentially, the idea behind the program is that we find Indigenous and non-Indigenous youth across the country who are already leaders in their own regard. Okay, these are kids from 15 to 17, from grade 9 to grade 12, but must be under 18 years of age. And kids who are involved in their community through volunteering activities. They're involved in their school by being on the school council or the head of the cheerleading squad, or doing something that shows leadership in their
Right.
in their community. And we select 50 of them. This year we selected 52 from all the way across Canada, and we get a quota per province. And our quota in the last year was 8 people, two seats for every province. So the 4 Atlantic provinces, we had 8. Excuse me. So we selected 8 people, 4 Indigenous and 4 non-Indigenous. So the total pack, if I can put it that way, or crew that came to here to Nova Scotia was 52 kids that were selected across the country. And they came and spent a week in Wolfville. Now, for all of us who have traveled, and if you can remember the first time you traveled, it can be a pretty unnerving experience. You arrive at an airport, you don't know where the bloody gate is, where you're going to get your bags, where do I go from here, and what door's out or what door's in. So anyway, all to say to you that my club, Halifax Northwest, and Jim's club, Dartmouth East, got together and collaborated and said, listen, why don't we welcome these people to Halifax, to Mi'kma'ki, which is the Indigenous term for, of course, the territory of the Mi'kmaq. Welcome them to Mi'kma'ki at the airport and make them feel, and give them a warm Atlantic welcome, and take a little bit of the stress off their shoulders, help them on the bus, and off they go to Wolfville. So that was the exercise that Jim and I were involved in, and I think
it really got a good reception. I feel like I think some of them were like really excited, and even like you said, just to have somebody greet them, because how many of them were traveling, not just for the first time, but the first time alone, essentially.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And some of them came, if you're coming from the James Bay area, for example, in Quebec, there was 2 kids from there. It can be pretty, it's a different language to start with, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were French speaking. That's their language their second language. Their first language, I believe, is Cree. But their second language would be French, right? And third would be English. So arriving here in Halifax, from way up there, never being out of their community before, in this particular case, it can be quite stressful. So having a friendly face and somebody says, "Hey, come over here. I'm here to help you," makes a big difference, right? And I think, Jim, you would have seen that on their faces and how they all sort of milled in.
They did.
and
Yeah,
were
like
comfortable, among their own, so to speak, and
yeah, I really enjoyed that. Like just watching them all come together, even just in the bus loading zone. Like
yeah,
it kind of went from like small groups of individuals to a pack. Like it was a group of an
yeah.
individual.
But what was interesting, Jim, is when they came here, when we met them at the airport. To your point, there were small packs, right? There were groups of
Oh,
from Ontario. There was groups from Atlantic Canada, another group from BC, that sort of, who knew each other. But what was interesting on the way out, we also met them at the airport on the way out, albeit in a less official fashion, because you don't want to get in the way of somebody who's about to get on a plane. I mean, there's a whole rigmarole to that. But it was
yeah,
interesting to see them, the change in the group dynamic.
yeah,
It wasn't little small packs of here and here. They were sort of coming together as a crew, and everybody was wondering or worrying about everybody else and making sure everybody was getting through the lines and the security and everything else. So the week, what I'm trying to say to you here in a roundabout way is the week that they spent together did what the purpose
yeah.
was.
I was gonna say it
Build
must
the
have been a
relationships.
success. Yeah,
Yeah, build relationships and understanding, etc. Right? So
yeah,
it was quite interesting to see that dynamic and how it changed over a week.
yeah.
But no, it was
Eric,
great, and it was good for our clubs as well because we got to collaborate as well and to get to know each other a little better, and that's always
yeah.
useful as well.
Oh, it was a great time, like just doing that. But again, it was from my point of view as somebody who like the most I did, I went with a soccer team over to England, like a team that we practiced together. We
Right?
did this when I was 16 or just under, and like got to go on that. But there was no point to it. Like it was soccer. Like there wasn't a bigger picture, and I
Yeah.
think it's like really important, especially with it being the youth, for this bigger picture to actually be put in front of them. Because like really, I didn't learn, and I know it'll sound sad, but I didn't learn about residential schools and like the whole trip um, from the East Coast and like being forced west with all the indigenous people until I was in university when I actually
That there was an incident in that same community, and the backdrop for the news reporting at the time was that school. Right?
so it was still the focal center of it. Yeah.
That school is still standing today. Why? Because the people were involved in it. It's their school. They planned it. It's theirs. There's ownership. And I think that to me was a very important part of the learning that I had when working with Indigenous people. Telling them what's good for them is not the way to go.
No.
Listening to what they need, listening to what they desire, what their community, what their culture requires, and trying to find a way forward in a partnership is the way to go.
Yeah.
And that's what HIP really is all about. Right.
When you told me that, when you said that to like everybody at the Rotary there, like that same thing is like telling the people what they need isn't the way.
Right.
I thought that then, and I think it again now, is with anybody when it comes to anything, if it's like for say our community, nobody tells us what we need. People
No.
get their voice, they get heard, and they will scream and like holler and go to this and that to get their municipality people to stand up for them. Like,
Yep.
why is it considered any different? Like to me, I just don't understand why anybody thinks that telling a group of people how they will learn to move forward is right. We don't do it to ourselves, so why are we doing it to anyone? And it really strikes me as it bothers me. But
yeah, I think it was the paternalistic attitude that came out of it, sort of thing, right? That we knew better.
But we don't. We don't know what's better for a people who are completely different in the way that they view community. Like myself and Eric, like we have the community game plan. We have this that we do for the community, and each community has its own thing. Each set of people have their own needs, and you can't build a community without involving a community.
No,
I guess that's the main thing. Like,
Yeah.
but
that's the way it was done, though. I mean,
I get it.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
And the housing was the same thing. I mean, you're going to get 5 houses, and here you are, and this is where they're going to go, and this is what they're going to look like, and whether you like it or not, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So I was really, really happy to see that there's a new approach, and like that's why, like the HIP program, when you brought that forward, I was like, yeah, I need to be a part of this somehow.
Yeah.
Because watching it be changed with the guidance of the people who need the change, like bringing people together, and again with the youth, it's great because your youth are better at being friends with each other. Let's be honest. Like you bring youth together, they hear each other better. So it's to get it at that level. I feel like it's important.
Somebody asked me recently, what do you hope to achieve with this youth to youth program, right? And I don't know what will come out of this at the end of the day, but you got to think, if you have an optimistic bone in your body, you got to think that if you bring 50 young people together over 10 years, that's 500 kids. 500 kids who are already leaders in their community by volunteering at the hospital, because that's the way they're selected. Right? We just don't go in and say this A, B, and C. They come forward and say, listen, this is what I'm doing in my community, in my school, in my neighborhood to build a better world. Based on that and their studies and references from their teachers, for example, they then are chosen to participate in this program. So you got to think that if you got 500 of those in 10 years, and another 10 years they're going to be in their 30s and mid 30s and into their 40s, you got to think that they're going to make a difference.
Yeah.
That what they learned at Wolfville or Acadia in the week that they were all together, will make a difference to them. And all you had to do, I went to the final session they had